Week 1, finally here. Now what the fuck do we do? Let's get those lineups optimized. Week 1, start sit, starts now. Week 1, finally here. Finally glad to be talking actual fantasy football, what we're going to be doing with our rosters through the season. And apologize, obviously, this is a video I would prefer to be out on Wednesday. We're in a new space today, and we're just going to have to bear with the changes as they come. This is not as quiet of a space. It's a little bit more of a noisy room. It's got some background noise to it, and that'll be something I will be tinkering with as the season goes on to try to get this optimized for viewing pleasure. But let's get to it. We're going to start with the starts of the week. And as far as these are, the guys that you're wondering about. Do I put them in my roster? Do I not put them in my roster? These aren't your lock solid RB1s and wide receiver ones like the DeAndre Hopkins and the Christian McCaffreys of the world. These are the guys that you drafted as fringe RB2s, fringe wide receiver 2s, wide receiver 3s, flex plays, and we're going to get figuring out, are these guys supposed to be in your lineup this week? And we're going to start with Melvin Gordon out of Denver, guy that last year, towards the end of the season, really started to thrive in this offense under Pat Shurmur, a guy that we know has really leaned on one running back more than the other. And in this case, Melvin Gordon is going to be the starter over Javonte Williams, guys. And I hate to break it to you, but it is going to be Melvin Gordon, not Javonte Williams, getting the bulk of the reps for the Denver Broncos here in week 1. And I'm pretty excited about it because I think they're going to lean heavy on the running game. I think they're going to kind of play it safe with steady Teddy in week 1. They're going to try to get that passing game going through the running game, which is what defense in the New York Giants against the pass. And that's why I also think that Gordon's going to thrive. That is definitely more their Achilles heel, is that front seven as opposed to the back end of the secondary. And so I'm thinking this guy is going to be touching the ball 18 to 22 times in the game. I think he scores a touchdown. It's quite possible he goes over 100 all-purpose yards. I'm thinking somewhere around the 120 all-purpose yards. I think Melvin Gordon has a really good day. I think it's quite possible he finishes the week as a top 12 running back. We're going to move on. James Robinson. Oh, my God. James Robinson. What a guy that's had such a tumultuous offseason as we consider the Jaguars drafting Travis Etienne in the first round. Is James Robinson going to be the guy? Is Etienne going to be the guy? Is he going to have to cede carries to Etienne? What's going on? Well, that's not a worry anymore. Well, they brought it, as I do believe Carlos Hyde will get some work. James Robinson should be the guy going against the worst run defense in 2020. They gave up 5.2 yards per carry, 24 touchdowns. Now, I admit there's a little bit of concern about Hyde being there, but I think he's going to be there to spell Robinson. We saw Robinson be a good running back last year, and this is a situation for him to thrive in week 1. I'm sorry, Houston had two. You can't really make up a worse offseason than what the Houston Texans just went through. I don't think their defense is fixed. If there's one part of this Jacksonville Jaguar offense I think thrives week 1, it's going to be the running game. I want James Robinson in my lineup. Now we're going to move to the passing game a little bit. Tyler Boyd from the Bengals. Now, he's probably one of the most underrated wide receivers in PPR, man. This guy just produces every single week. It's because he's not a huge playmaker, but he's consistent. And that's what I love out of fantasy, is guys that are consistent, have really good floors, have a decent ceiling. And Tyler Boyd is that guy. And he's going against a Vikings defense that was just terrible. Gave up the 3rd most yards per reception in 2020. Gave up 30 touchdowns to receivers in 2020. And honestly, you got Tyler Boyd. T. Higgins, I think, is honestly probably going to be a pretty good play this week as well. But they're going to be bringing Chase along a little slower. This guy had a bad training camp. The wheels aren't quite greased up yet from that year off. And it's going to, I think, be like Boyd and Higgins being the focal point of this passing game until Chase gets caught up and he gets acclimated to the NFL level of play. I think Tyler Boyd is going to be a great play for your lineup this week, should be in there. This was supposed to be a start in favor of Gus Edwards. Next thing I know, I'm working on the video. I look at Twitter. I see coming across the pipeline from Ian Rappaport that Gus Edwards feared to have a significant knee injury in practice. Next thing I see from Adam Schefter, Ravens fear Gus Edwards has torn ACL. And guess what? You pretty much know when a player has a torn ACL before the MRI. So we're basically without Gus Edwards for the rest of the season. There goes my spot for this 1 week start spot. Oh, wait, no. Tyson Williams, instantly plug him in right now into that Gus Edwards must start territory for week 1. We're talking about a guy right now that has very little depth behind him. You have Trenton Cannon, who is literally going to be coming in as a special teams guy. He's a gunner for the kickoff and punt returns. You're talking about a guy in Le'Veon Bell who was pulled off the dumpster heap just a couple days ago. He's only practiced with the team for 2 days, was brought up to the active roster this morning. Who the fuck are they going to hand the ball off to other than Tyson Williams? This guy is going to have a significant workload in week 1 because they have to give him a significant workload in week 1. And then you're talking about the matchup. The reason Gus Edwards was supposed to be in your lineup in week 1 was because of this fucking awesome matchup going against the Las Vegas Raiders, who gave up 4.6 yards a carry last year. This team gave up 24 touchdowns in 2020. That's going to Tyson Williams. He's going to be eating. He's going to be doing the goddamn fucking Zeke Elliott feed me thing. It's going to be fucking awesome for you, your roster. If he's on the fucking waiver wire, you need to go get him right now and stick him right into your fucking goddamn flex, right into your RB2. I don't know, wherever you can fit him in your lineup, he needs to be there because he's going to get fed. This is one of the best matchups you can get in week 1, and this is a team that is going to have to lean on him. There's no way Le'Veon Bell comes in here and out-touches Tyson Williams week 1. It's going to be the Tyson Williams and Lamar Jackson show. This is insane what's going on with the Baltimore Ravens. But the Gus Edwards owner's loss is the Tyson Williams owner's gain. So go gain yourself some Tyson Williams off the waiver wire if you can, and if he's on your roster, he should be in your lineup. Period. Now, these sits might be a little bit of something you don't want to hear. They might be a little controversial, but honestly, we're gonna start in Detroit with a running back everybody's super excited coming into his second year. Yeah, you know who I'm talking about now, DeAndre Swift. This man, this is me being safe. This guy has been injured throughout training camp. Now he's been a full go this week, but we're talking about a guy who early training camp going into that groin injury. They were worried. Anthony Lynn worried about him being in game shape for week 1. I don't think this guy's going to be in game shape for week 1. I don't think they're going to give him that full bevy of carries and that you want out of a guy that you're expecting from where you took him in the draft. I don't think a guy who's going to return RB2 numbers. I think he's a flex this week, and I think he's kind of a sketchy flex. He can do well. We have all seen the talent, but I also think that this team, Anthony Lynn, is totally happy with Williams. He's talked him up quite a bit in training camp. And Jamar Jefferson out of Oregon State, rookie, really flashed quite a bit in preseason. I think they're happy with the depth they have in the running back room, and I don't think they're going to lean on their big playmaking asset in DeAndre Swift until he's 100% ready to go, game shape. And I don't think that's going to be week 1. So you're going against one of the league's toughest front sevens. It's not a good matchup. This offense isn't expected to be extremely good in the Detroit Lions, whereas you're seeing a healthy 49ers offense that was the most injury plagued team last year. And so it's it's not the perfect storm for Swift. It's actually, he himself is just rowing himself right into that storm, and I'm not comfortable playing him week one. We'll look see how things go week one and how things progress into week two. And then moving on, we're going to look at another guy who has a lot of hype after his rookie season, Chase Claypool, wide receiver for the Pittsburgh Steelers, in a brand new offense. All right, we don't know how Ben Roethlisberger is going to look in this. Juju came back this year. It was supposed to be Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool, and Juju was supposed to go somewhere else. He came back. You know, he's a big play receiver going against a secondary that doesn't give up big plays. You know, the O-line looked good in preseason, but this was one of the biggest concerns coming into the year, was how good this offensive line was going to be. And I think against this Buffalo defense, he might find it hard to buy the time to go deep for Chase Claypool. I think he's going to have to do one of those vintage catch a touchdown from 2 yards out that he was doing last year, and he's going to have to thrive on getting on the end zone. And I don't want that out of my wide receiver. I want a guy that has a high upside of getting in the end zone, but is also going to have a nice floor of targets and a nice floor of receptions and a nice floor of yardage. And I just don't think Claypool brings that week one until we see what this Pittsburgh offense, this new revamped Pittsburgh offense, looks like. Finally, the last sit that I have, David Montgomery. A lot of you guys drafted David Montgomery possibly to be an RB1, depending on how you drafted. Maybe you went tight end, wide receiver, and you thought Montgomery was going to be a good RB1 based on the way that he ended his season. But let's not forget, he ended the season with like the best running back schedule in the league last year. And this is not a guy who has thrived in negative matchups. And let's face it, this is not a great matchup. The LA Rams last year gave up 3.8 yards per carry, 12 rushing touchdowns. That's less than one per game, in case you're doing the math. This is not a good matchup for Montgomery. He has not thrived in negative matchups. And I could just see this one getting out of hand for the Chicago Bears. I know Matt Nagy's talked about, oh, man, Montgomery could be a 20-touch back, 22 touch back in the NFL, but you got to be able to keep up with a new revamped offense that's got Matt Stafford under center for the Rams. McVay's ready to rock and roll, sling that ball all over the place. The running game, I think, is going to be good with Henderson and Penny. Michelle. But I just honestly believe that Montgomery is going to be a guy that will disappoint week one based on the tough matchup. Some DFS plays. All right, let's do a little DFS for you. Now, I got 2 wide receivers. I got 1 running back. The first wide receiver is the best value, and he's also the biggest gamble. And that's Donovan Peoples Jones, wide receiver, Cleveland Browns. He's the number 3. Rashad Higgins dinged up. Odell Beckham coming off that torn ACL. News is, yes, he's going full go in practice, but it sounds like he's not going to get all of the reps, that they're going to ease him in week one. This is also a matchup going against the high-octane offense of the Kansas City Chiefs. You know, they're going to have to sling the ball around a little bit. Obviously, they're going to try to run the ball, but they tried to pass the ball against these guys last year when they played. Donovan Peoples Jones, a guy that was talked up big time. I have not heard more about a fringe player in the offseason than Donovan Peoples Jones this year. This guy was constantly talked about in training camp every single week. He's talked about a guy that's possibly going to be replacing Odell Beckham or Jarvis Landry here. Both those guys on 1-year contracts, by the way. And I think he's going to get enough chances this week to break one. He was hyper efficient with his touches. If you go look what he did in 2020, he was super hyper efficient with his touches. He had a great yards per reception, great touchdown rate per reception. I think there's quite quite good chance this guy gets breaks a big play, gets in the end zone, gives you at least 60 yards receiving. Now, granted, I don't think the receptions are going to be there, but I think he's going to possibly make a big play. He's only 3,000 on DraftKings. He's a super good deal. Next, Tevin Coleman. I know everybody thinks Carter is the guy in New York. In fact, the Jets have him listed as the 4th running back on the roster. He is buried right now. Carter is the biggest fallacy week 1, in my opinion, as far as running back depth. He is not going to be the guy. Right now, Tevin Coleman, a guy that has experience with this coaching staff, experience with this scheme, is one of the most efficient pass catchers in the league since he's been playing. He's a guy that I think has the ability to be extremely productive, and you're only getting him for $4,900 on DraftKings. Quite possible. I think he gets double-digit touches week 1, and he pays you back your $4,900. And finally, Monday night, going back to the Monday night game, going back into that Ravens squad, I'm going to say Marquise Brown. Look at what this guy has done the first 2 years of his career in week 1. He's been absolutely awesome. He's great. He's the only receiver outside of Mark Andrews, so the only wide receiver that has any sort of chemistry with Lamar Jackson. Sammy Watkins is the only other receiver that they were expecting to get contribution from that's healthy on the roster right now. So the target tree should basically be Marquise Brown, Sammy Watkins, Mark Andrews, sprinkle in a couple other guys. It's going to be a pretty focused wide receiving or target tree for these wide receivers. I like Marquise Brown. He's just balled out week 1. His first 2 years of his career. I expect it to happen one more time. This defense that they're sporting in Las Vegas is not great. Give me a little bit of Marquise Brown, only $5,100 on DraftKings. And, if you like what you saw, if you like what you heard, a like, a share, a subscribe goes a long way. I appreciate it. We're going to be coming up with more content next week. We will have our start sits. Once again, that should come out next Wednesday. And then I'm going to have a little bit of a unique video, I believe, coming out on Tuesday. That's going to be remember not to overreact to week 1, because crazy shit happens every year in week 1. And everybody overreacts. They spend a shit ton of fab after that. Next thing you know, that was a 1-week wonder. And we're just going to make sure that we put out a video that kind of emphasizes, make sure you're responsible with your fab after week 1. We get a lot of aberrations. Thank you for watching.